Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. Two orphaned creatures of the night, one dedicated to his war on crime, the other living off crime's spoils. One's got dark in his name, so why not team him up with the Dark Knight? I'm taking issue with The Darkness / Batman, written by Jeff Loeb and Scott Lobdell, with art by Mark Silvestri, David Finch, Clarence Lansing, Joe Weems, Danny Miki, and the colorist team Liquid. Let's see if this comic makes us want to turn the page, or turn our heads. The cover features the two on a rooftop corner, Bats standing boldly into the moonlit night sky, and Darkness crouched down surrounded by his impish entourage. We begin in Commissioner Gordon's office, conferring with Batman about a recent murder spree of mafia families.
A long-time enforcer. They called him Lucky because he had the uncanny ability to know exactly where to break his victims' bones.
However, the X-Men told him that it was not quite uncanny enough to let him join the team, and he's resented them ever since.
Now someone has broken him.
One can only hope he lived long enough to appreciate the irony. Joker's locked up in Arkham, and Bane isn't strong enough to cause the seemingly impossible kinds of killing on display. Given the way the murders were staged, it's clear that whoever is responsible wants to instill fear in the underworld, a tactic with which Batman is all too familiar. Just a warning if you're considering picking up this comic, this panel I've pixelated is particularly graphic. Maybe it wouldn't faze some people, but is still pretty intense, though it is probably the most horrific this comic gets. 24 hours later, Bats is listening in on a gathering of would-be capos, thinking there'd be strength in numbers when you'd just make the killer's job easier.
You're carrying on like a bunch of schoolgirls. Now stop drawing those weird angular S's and complaining about Mr. Clemens' 5th period algebra class.
Gunfire explodes from the restaurant, and Pointy Ears swings down to protect a homeless woman who is too frightened to find cover. When the chaos quiets down, Batman finds a collection of dark imps, some dressed in jackets, backwards worn caps, and shoes possibly too big for its feet. Who let David Goyer do a reboot of the Quack Pack? It wasn't even a good show to begin with. One of these self-described Darklings mentions that their boss has criticized their lack of discretion, like spray painting said boss's name on the wall. Batman isn't on their list of kills, so with the mobsters dead, they rush past the vigilante and disappear into the shadows. The following morning, in a Gotham Arms suite, Frankie Franchetti is chastising his adopted nephew, Jackie Estacado. The kid's done a less than impressive job clearing out those in Frankie's way of claiming Gotham for himself. However, the gangs feel more comfortable not organizing among themselves, since it improves the odds of operating under Batman's radar. The locals are more frightened by that guy than they are about anything you or I will do to them. I mean, all I've done is kill their fellow crooks in horrific displays of abject cruelty. But the Batman? He dresses like a bat! Frankie says theirs is a business that's been around before Pointy Ears, and they'll be around after he's gone, and tasks Jackie with killing him. But more than that, the old gangster suspects Jackie is trouble because someone from his past lives in town, and he should go talk to her, in hopes he'll better focus on the job. In his cave, Batman is busy researching, noting how he finds himself less comfortable in the dark than he used to. While Alfred is telling him about a charity event that evening, he says to make standard excuses for his absence while he researches the word darkness that one of the imps was spray painting.
There are scattered references to the word in several ancient dialects. Most of them are about normal nighttime, others are about power outages, and a few that I'm pretty sure are just games of peekaboo. This investigation may take me a while.
But the butler keeps talking like Bruce is going to show up to the event.
Alfred, are you ignoring me?
Yes, I am, sir. Okay, that was funny. There'll always be another crime to investigate, more opportunities to get himself nearly killed, but the money raised that night will go to supporting the citizens of Crime Alley, called Park Row before the Waynes were murdered. While Batman's done what he can to clean the streets at night, much of the work is being done by a handful of people like Jenny Romano, who didn't let the pain of her past control her life like some people. As we see the young woman in a shelter, food kitchen, clinic, can't really tell, Jackie is outside looking in. As Batman's narration points out that most people confronted with their past turn from the light and to the darkness, Jackie leaves. Sorry, Hallmark Channel, but not even comics can make your formulaic romance movies interesting. Franchetti is in his limo, his driver trying to shake a tailing car, which he manages before being hit by a second car, hint hint. Frankie steps out and is confronted by Two-Face, who tells him that Gotham don't take kindly to mobsters what wants to organize in their chaotic environments. He goes with his go-to move, flipping his trademark coin.
Clean side, you get to go along your way. If it's the scarred side up, I kill you and everyone who looks like you.
Where to begin? Eeny, meeny, miny, kill!
Frankie looks out and it comes up clean, so he's left on the side of the road. And if the sound effects are any indication, I think that collision messed with one of the car's engines. Or maybe it just drives like that because Harv insists on going to the second best mechanic in town. Turn the comic vertically and Jackie's at the charity gala, trading flirtations with a woman that ditches him the second she sees Bruce Wayne. He then encounters his old friend Jenny, looking pretty ritzy for someone so devoted to charity work. After their pleasantries, she introduces him to Bruce Wayne? But that other woman just took him by the arm when they were in the background. I knew he was a ninja, but I didn't know he knew the shadow clone jutsu. Why is he wasting a talent like that on a charity gala? Bruce has apparently heard much about Jackie and feels they have much in common, though Estacado disagrees. Wayne takes Jenny to the podium, adding jealousy to Jackie's envy, as he vows to expose him.
I know, so I choose to expose myself.
Please, there are ladies present.
Later that night, he drops his uncle off at their suite, where Frankie finds his room safe left barren by Catwoman. Yeah, between her purple with black thigh-high boots and her current suit, she sported this all-purple, more cat-like costume, complete with a tail. Not one of my favorites personally, but whatever. He pulls a gun on her, but she's already alleviated him of his clip, then heads out the window with her spoils. Fortunately for her, Frankie forgot there would likely be a bullet left in the chamber, or there'd be cat brains splattered all over the wall. Jenny is taken home by Wayne's personal vehicle, and Jackie is standing outside waiting for her, being snarky about the ride. She's not interested in explaining herself and is headed to bed, so her old friend can self-loathe in solitude. After she leaves, one of the Darklings, called Hush, I wonder if this one has a misplaced hatred of Bruce Wayne too, tells Estacado he's being watched. Of course, it's Batman on a 2-page spread that's also part of a splash page, narrating Jackie's origin, being raised in an orphanage with Jenny after his mom died in childbirth. His father, meanwhile, had apparently died 9 months to the day earlier. So, right after his son was conceived? He walked under 7 ladders, let 7 black cats cross his path, and broke 7 mirrors. Turns out acts of bad luck aren't canceled out if you play them like casino slots. Said father worked for Frankie Franchetti, who, upon learning of Jackie's existence, illegally obtained guardianship of the boy and groomed him as his lieutenant. There exist FBI files on Jackie's suspected hits, but nothing proven. On another splash page / 2-pager, Jackie is right behind Bats with a gun, playfully saying bang instead of pulling the trigger. Of course, stealthy as he was, it was noisy by the Dark Knight standards, so he let him get in close to think he had an advantage, because there's no way that could backfire. Jackie asks why he's being spied on, and the answer is, it's kind of what Batman does. He in turn asks about Uncle Frankie's whereabouts, and Jackie goes ahead and tells him because the Bat is about to die anyway.
Just gonna assume it all went to plan, what?
Of course, Pointy Ears decks him and leaves, only out of respect for Jenny, expecting him to learn from his mistakes and leave town when he comes to. However, the Darklings planted one of their own on the Batmobile, intending to find their quarry's lair and strike when he least suspects it. It's a clever plan if their stowaway hadn't chose the thruster for his seating. Batman activates the turbo, leaving Spanders a little cooked, and they're ready to wash. Bruce had better hope no cats try sneaking in there for warmth during the winter, or Selina's gonna be ticked. The next day, Wayne is out jogging because Gotham's premier playboy needs to be seen being all billionaire-y. Jackie catches up to him, told where he was by his butler and wanting to chat about Jenny. She deserves better than the standard high society chicks, and he doesn't want to see her hurt. Bruce replies she's already been hurt in her disappointment in Jackie's choice of career. When the rich boy mentioned last night that they shared something in common, He meant all three of them being orphans, trying to please parents that will never know or love them. Jenny's best friend and only love is wasting his potential for self-respect, Bruce thinks, and that hits a nerve.
Give me one good reason why I don't kill you right here. Because you can't.
Then Wayne takes off, telling Jackie to consider what he said. Careful how much of the bat you let slip in the daylight, man. Jackie might be just smart enough to put two and two together. Then again, he did tell you where his uncle was staying before not shooting you, so maybe I'm giving him too much credit. Returning to his suite, Jackie passes Killer Croc, who was turned down for the job of killing Batman. Frankie is frustrated his personal ad to kill a crime fighter was answered by one of the local freaks, but I don't know why he should be surprised. Does he not know Gotham's rep? Anyway, his nephew insists he can kill Batman, and Franchetti will give him one more chance before sending him back to New York, advising that he remember the first rule in facing the enemy is discovering his worst fear. So, as we turn the comic vertical again, Darkness and his pint-sized goons pay a visit to the Joker, doing a stand-up routine for an audience of none in his cell.
I want to kill the Batman. What does he fear most? This reminds me of a joke. These guys walk into a bar. One guy orders a beer, and the other turns into a man-eating shark. The shark starts going around the bar, mauling and hacking and chewing away at everyone else in the bar. It's a crowded bar, let me tell you. When the guy who's drinking the beer, I think his name is Fred, pulls out a dead bird from his pocket and uses it to beat the bartender to death. Then he says, "Would you like fries with that?" Ha! That doesn't make any sense. You're the one that asked the silly question.
That feels like a very Joker-appropriate answer. Are we sure Lobdell worked on this? Keeping the vertical format for another two-page spread, Batman sneaks into Franchetti's suite, knowing he was expected given the lack of security. When he feels his spinal fluid go cold, he turns to find the Darkness has arrived, realizing it's one man, not an organization. Well, one man and his imps, one of whom sings the 66 TV show theme song.
Why, Batman, what big ears you have!
Someone's clearly never read a Batman comic drawn by Kelly Jones. Back then, he got free HBO on those things. From his dialogue saying, "So you're the Batman," it looks like the armored-up Estacado is trying to give the impression that this is their first meeting, maybe trying to hide his own secret identity. He sicks the Darklings on bats, and while they are great in number, there's little trouble knocking them back. So little, in fact, that one that he didn't even hit reels just to practice. Back to vertical. Sheesh. Where the detective says he'd done his research on the ancient power of the Darkness, like how it's bestowed upon its possessor when they're 21.
It is power as old as time.
Power as old as time, song as old as rhyme, Darkness and the Hitman. If he'd read up on the thing, why did he narrate that he thought it was an organization until now? Maybe because he personally figures it's too much power for one person. As he's overwhelmed and restrained, Batman says the man controls the power, not the other way around, and the bearer hasn't killed him yet because he wants to be better than the entity. He can talk this way to the Darkness because Pointy Ears is what he might have once been. A man. He knocks Jackie back and jumps out a window, and the hitman does not pursue. That don't sit well with Uncle Frankie the following morning. Estacado asks if it's even right to kill the Dark Knight. Mobsters are one thing, but someone trying to do some good in the world is something else entirely. Frankie's answer is the 11:43 flight back to Manhattan his nephew will be on, awaiting a long talk when they see each other again. Meanwhile, Alfred finishes up what may be a record number of stitches, making a vague reference comparing Bruce and Jackie, which Bats gruffly denies.
I am nothing like him. I would never let my sidekicks wear ball caps backwards. Sure, maybe that's what drove Jason away, but I have to stick to my principles, Alfred.
What the butler actually meant was that he wonders if Jackie could have turned out more like Bruce, if he had the benefit of people's faith like the billionaire does. So I guess Bats quickly realized it was Estacado under the magic armor, so that confusing line earlier was all the more pointless. At sunset, Jackie is at the door of the police station when Jenny arrives, having received his message. He's finally going to try and do some good with his life, like she asked him to do long ago. She joins him inside, and it's not long before he's about to step into Jim Gordon's office. Unfortunately, Frankie barges in with several armed goons, believing his nephew is turning stooly on him, and blaming the treachery on Jenny's influence. A firefight ensues, and Jim covers the pair as they run up a flight of stairs. Eventually, Franchetti is the only mobster still breathing, and he rabbits, with Gordon, for some reason, the only cop in pursuit. Did all the others get killed, too? We saw some get shot, but there have to be more in the precinct, right? What, are they all out patrolling the streets of Gotham? That's Bruce Wayne's job! Jim sees an officer secured to the wall with something, and deduces the mob war killer is afoot. Either that or Spider-Man. Frankie reaches Jenny on the roof, intending to make her pay for uncorrupting Jackie, but fortunately Batman is right behind him. Frankie proves how unafraid he is by almost immediately giving up. That, however, is when darkness shows up, grabbing Pointy Ears' face with both hands, but oddly silent. Bats notes his opponent's superior strength, how easily he could win this fight, but he doesn't. Perhaps, Jackie muses, because he doesn't want to. Batman throws down a smoke screen, allowing him to use the bat signal on darkness. Jackie begins saying that light alone doesn't work, then his armor retracts, much to his surprise, and he guesses that it's solar-powered. Bat narration says it's not, but maybe the darkness will be weakened by indecision. Pretty sure something being solar-powered doesn't mean it emits the same properties as sunlight, unless it was specifically designed to mimic it. But hey, I could be wrong. The main takeaway, though, seems to be that this gives our hitman an excuse to call off the armor and make it seem to others as if he has no control over the situation. Also, in his first crossover with Hulk, he mentioned that there was too much light, artificial light, in the subway tunnel that it affected his powers, so... Frankie threatens to shoot Jenny unless Batman kills the light, not caring what she means to his nephew. As both the Bat and Jackie close in, Jenny falls, and the Caped Crusader dives in after her, with some dialogue reminiscent of the first Superman movie. As to the "who's got you" question, Bats is caught by a string of Darklings, referenced as a friend. Kind of an exaggeration, don't you think, Bruce? Or did he mean in terms of Jenny being Jackie's friend? Whatever. It's 2 nights later, and after his assault on Gotham PD, outstanding warrants for Frankie Franchetti were unsealed, as well as an unnamed source turning state's evidence on him, so he's being extradited back to New York. Though thinking perhaps Darkness's loyalties to the mob may lead him to free Frankie, it seems unfounded, and Batman wonders if he should uncover the Darkness's identity? You know who he is! You were there on the rooftop! All the narration seemed to indicate that you knew who he was! Did you mean the entity specifically? What's going on? Anyway, the comic ends with Jackie heading out of Gotham, and Batman, as he once again dives back into the night, ponders if extinguishing darkness is as simple as introducing a little light. He drives off in the Batmobile, as he and the night embrace each other.
Phrasing?
And that was The Darkness / Batman. It was pretty solid, until those last several pages. I overall liked the art. It had an appropriate tone, and aside from how awkward Killer Croc looked, my only problems were all the 2-page spreads, especially the vertical turns, but the latter is more a matter of formatting. Though even the horizontal spreads still read like a standard page-by-page, left-to-right format. For the physical copy I have, the fundraiser scene looked like this, which I originally had to photograph because the scan site I got the other pages from didn't have it. Not being able to read the dialogue, even if it's just a couple of bubbles, is pretty annoying, and they definitely should have rethought this for the initial one-shot. Though, in fairness, they did for an anniversary collection including The Darkness crossing over with Superman, where I found that and other pages previously missing from my files because I wrote the script based on my physical copy, and that was a couple of years before getting the scans. And since the site I usually got my scans from at the time of this recording has stopped letting you copy images, I tried to find another, and that site didn't even have the images, even though they have the collection listed, so I have to go back to the first site and screenshot the pages, that is when ads aren't popping up with every other freaking click,
And do you see why I went with Angry Spork?
Laugh with me, Jocko. Laugh with me.
The story overall was good, not like other more traditional crossovers. The Top Cow characters are clearly in the wrong place, and the story does not let them forget it, what with all the Bat villain cameos we get. But then things got confusing. Batman researched the Darkness entity, but thought it was a group until he saw Jackie armored up. Between his investigation of Estacado's past, fighting Darkness, what Alfred said while he was stitching him up, and the bit with the signal, it seemed like Bruce already knew the guy leading the knockoff gremlins was the Franchetti family's lieutenant. But then his closing narration, wondering about looking into his identity, suggests otherwise, unless there's some alternate way to read that line that I'm overlooking. As previously mentioned, I originally wrote this review several years ago, and this book, when I read it way back when, was probably my introduction to the Darkness. When compared to the more freshly experienced crossovers we've looked at this year, I find this story did a much better job making Estacado a character, and his Darklings a bit more interesting. He's kind of arrogant, yes, putting up this front while around an old friend and possible unrequited love. There are definitely signs he could be both jealous and envious of Bruce Wayne, a fellow orphan that seemed to have it made, even taking away the attention of a woman he was flirting with. He seems to have a moral compass, exemplified by questioning if Batman should be killed because he's trying to do good. He has that jogging chat with Bruce, nice touch that Estacado is the only one of the two that's winded, about how they're both seeking approval from dead parents, and that resonates with a previous scene of him swearing to his surrogate parent, his foster Uncle Frankie, that he won't let him down, but pausing just a little. Though I do find Bruce's response to his death threat puzzling. How is that supposed to read? His public persona isn't known for being a tough guy, so it'd seem a little out of character. What does he mean that Jackie can't kill him? Is he trying to convey that Wayne doesn't view him as a threat? Or that he wouldn't do it because of Jenny? I suppose we have to assume that Jackie was going to turn himself in if his seeing Gordon had nothing to do with Franchetti, though I don't see a confession being totally removed from his boss either. Jenny seems, in some ways, a minor player, one mostly relegated as someone Jackie is protective of, and Bruce admits does a lot of good for the city that deserves recognition, a kind of admiration or respect. It's not necessarily a bad thing, as she is something of a driving force for Estacado to be better, but their interactions alone are minimal, and their past is largely implied, so her importance can only go so far. Similarly, Batman suddenly becoming less comfortable in the shadows, while making sense, isn't shown as well as it could be. The Darklings vanish into the night, Jackie appears behind him in an instant. That should unnerve someone that relies so much on darkness and shadows, but it doesn't feel earned. Especially when some narration implies superhuman hearing, like being snuck up on, being noisy, and hearing the hitman move over gunfire. Despite that, and a bit of gore at the beginning, it was still entertaining. There were genuinely funny moments, and my lack of knowledge about Jackie Estacado or his alter ego didn't feel like a hindrance. If you wanted to give this a read without reading a bunch of Darkness comics first, I don't think you'd have a problem. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.